Did you know that your tongue posture can make your pelvic floor weaker? How about this? That if your tongue isn't strong enough, that it can have an impact on the strength and resiliency of your pelvic floor muscles. Hi, my name is Anitupa Wallace, and I am a board-certified orthopedic physical therapist specializing in pelvic floor health and a myofunctional therapist. And I help people connect their oral function to their pelvic floor health as well as whole body stability from tongue to tailbone. So first, I want to welcome you to this first episode of Tongue to Tailbone, where I work to help bridge the connection of the functions of your tongue, but more than just your tongue, it also includes everything that is housed inside of your head, as well as what is below it, and also all of the implications on all of the other structures in our body, so our chest, our abdomen, and even down into our pelvic cavity. But first, I wanted to at least explain this idea of tongue to tailbone and why I called it tongue to tailbone. And it's actually much more than just an idea. So this has actually been studied, it's been researched, and we can also see it in our everyday life as well, which we will discuss and experiment with just a little bit later. But first, I wanted to show you a model that I have here, which is my friend Cheeky. So it's like my little skull model. So with Cheeky, we can see here that there are actually several muscles that make up the process of mastication, and the tongue is one of them. It's actually one of the biggest muscles in mastication. So the tongue is an accessory muscle, and it aids in mastication. And if you don't know what mastication is, it's actually the process of when we are actually chewing our food, and then we help to break it down with our teeth, and then the tongue is what is actually used to help to go and push the food after it has been chewed down into the back of our throat. So when we are swallowing it, whether it's like with food, liquid, we want to make sure that the tongue is functioning well. So we want to have good muscles of mastication, because otherwise then our swallowing can be impacted. And it's not even just our swallowing, but also our speech. The tongue plays a really big role with that. But today we're just going to be focusing more on mastication. So with Cheeky here, we can see some additional muscles of mastication. We have the masseter, which is here on the side. We also have the temporalis, and then inside, if we open it up, we also have the pterygoid muscles as well too. And so it's kind of more on the inside. And so we want those muscles to be able to function well. It's what helps to open and close our jaw and ensure that we can be able to chew effectively. And so we also have a lot of other smaller muscles that actually connect into the tongue, into the jaw, and they have a lot of really important function as well. But when all these muscles are functioning, working well, the ideal is that when the mouth is closed and we aren't chewing, that the tongue is resting along the upper palate of our jaw. So when the tongue is resting along the upper palate, it allows for optimal nostril breathing, and that will help to assist with the swallowing of saliva, liquids, food, and also even our speech, make it a little bit clearer. So especially when we're saying certain words with the letters either L or D. So the tongue is a really big part of that. When the tongue is resting on the upper palate, we are also encouraging nostril breathing, and that is really going to help to encourage optimal mobility of our respiratory diaphragm. So we want it to be able to move up and down every single time that we're taking an inhale. So it's going to draw down, and then when we exhale, it's going to be drawing back up into the thoracic cavity. And so we have this nice dynamic movement of the respiratory diaphragm. And that also then helps to encourage movement in the pelvic floor or pelvic diaphragm as well too. And so this can really only occur optimally when the tongue is in that optimal position, which is resting along the roof of the mouth, not the floor of the mouth. And so we're going to experiment with this in just a little bit. So what you're going to do is we're going to begin by placing the tip of the tongue, so right behind your top two front teeth, and we usually call this place the spot. So, but it's actually like the lingual palatal area. And so we want to keep our tongue in that spot. And so what you're going to do is you're going to close your mouth, and then you're going to begin to breathe through your nose. And so if you have enough awareness, you might even be able to feel that as you're breathing, that breath is also translating all the way down in towards your pelvic floor area. So now what you're going to do is actually keep your mouth open, allow your tongue to rest on the floor of your mouth, and then breathe. So you're going to notice how it's going to be a lot harder for you to be able to breathe through your nostrils. Breath is going to be a lot shallower. There's going to be a minimal movement to your respiratory diaphragm. You might not even feel very much that's happening in the pelvic floor area at all. So In one case report that was done in 2023 in the Journal of Women's and Pelvic Health Physical Therapy, it was noted that a congenital condition whereby the lingual frenulum was shortened, and this is essentially kind of like a tongue tie. And so this was detected in a particular patient who was also experiencing some primary dyspareunia, or also known as like pain with sexual intercourse. And despite, she was doing physical therapy to address her pelvic pain, but she was also making very, very slow progress compared to the norm. And so it wasn't until a month after she had a frenotomy, which was to go and remove that tie, that she attempted sexual intercourse. And following that procedure, and she had a marked difference in her symptoms, and she was actually able to relax her pelvic floor voluntarily. So when we look at not just the muscles of the tongue, but also where it connects through the connective tissue along the front of the spine, all the way down towards our tailbone, we can see that if there is any tension or if there's a lack of mobility of the tongue, that it will have an impact on many of the musculoskeletal parts in the pelvis, and maybe even vice versa as well. So even something as simple as your balance can also be impacted when your tongue is not in the optimal position. So if you've ever been in a yoga class and maybe you've worked on tree pose, for example, so it's like where you're standing on one leg and then you have your opposite foot that is resting along the inner thigh or the knee, and you might find that your balance is, you're really struggling to find your balance and it's really hard to maintain that position. And maybe your yoga instructor might have told you to go and place your tongue along your upper palate, and then you notice that your balance is actually a lot better. You're a lot stronger, you're much more stable, able to hold that position for a little bit longer compared to where it was before. So it's really important, I think, and great to see just how much our tongue can actually have a big overall impact in our overall balance. So if you've ever noticed that your balance is off, that you might be going through pelvic floor PT for a really long time with pelvic floor dysfunction and noticing that you're not getting better and it's taking a lot longer to heal from the condition that you're experiencing, then it might be really great to just kind of pay attention to what's going on inside of your jaw or your tongue. Notice that it might actually be synonymous to some of the tension that is also present in the lower part of the body, and just to be able to be really curious and explore. So thank you so much for sticking around and listening. And if you found this information helpful, please consider subscribing for weekly tips on connecting with pelvic floor health, with myo as well as oral function. You can also leave a comment below, and I'd love for you to share if you have ever had one of these experiences where your breath has ever been impacted on your pelvic floor health. So again, I hope to see you next time.